But we've been doing this 40 days of love, and we've been going through that, and I know that Scott kind of subtly challenged you to be able to share your stories. I mean, that's the power of understanding God's love, is when we do share it with each other. And so I want to encourage you to not only do that and let us know ahead of time, but even if you come next week and to be able to share that, that would be great. We'd really love to do that. This particular week, the title of this message is Habits of a Loving Heart. And really, it's the title. We've been doing this with 17 churches, and so it's the title that was set for the whole week. And so in your groups, actually, it'll really focus in specifically about some habits that helps you develop the love in your own heart to be able to show that love to others. But I want to kind of go a little different way in this, and today I want to kind of focus on it from a different way. And what I want to do is I want to talk about soccer. You know, I know you're going to figure, I don't get that, but not soccer specifically, but soccer teaches us there's things about soccer that teach us about love. There's a picture here. You see my daughter. I was yesterday at the game, and she was the goalkeeper, and we won, by the way. Not that that matters. But anyway, she did win, and it's really important to have a goalie in a game. It's important to be able to, obviously they can score if you don't have one, but it's also important to have the others. It's important to have a fullback and a forward, and all the kids play, because soccer is an ongoing thing. There's no, okay, it's our turn to have the ball for a while, and then it's yours. It's an ongoing thing. But there's something in this picture that's equally important. And if you look at it closely, past my daughter, there's a stick there with a flag on it. You got the circle thing going on that? That's okay. If you notice it, it's the corner flag. And there's 4 of them in the game of soccer. And what it does, it marks the boundaries of the field, because really, if you don't have boundaries, it's really hard to play the game, certainly with any enjoyment, but even effectively, that you need to know kind of the boundaries of where everything exists. Well, loving relationships are like soccer in that way. Loving relationships happen where both sides are actively at work in the relationship and going on, but also that loving relationships require us to be able to work within a set of boundaries, to define so that we don't step out and go beyond. And if we do, then we stop the game and we regroup and we start over, much like, you grab the ball and you throw it back in and you get the game going again. You should have an insert if you got a program today, it has a picture of a soccer field on it. On that particular diagram, if you want to follow along, you're welcome to, and mentally you can do it. There's a box on the top and the bottom. I'd like you to write your name on one of them, and then write the name of the person that you've been thinking about for these 40 days on the other one. So it might be you and you're on the top one, and your spouse on the bottom one, or you and your kids, or it might be your classmates, you and your classmate, someone in class or workplace, or honestly, it could be you and Heartland Church, or you and something else. You can put anything in there that can be able to understand that, because we've been talking about this 40 days of trying to really be specific and take this love of God in this field, if you will, and apply it in a way that you engage with this person. It's not enough to say, okay, I'm going to learn about love and I have no contact with that person. You have to have the contact to be able to engage with that. So write that name in there. And then if you follow along with this idea, what we've been talking about these last weeks are ways in which we've seen habits or behaviors that really play within that field. So the first week we talked about God's love being important. It has to be a part of that. Then we talked about how patience is a part of that, and kindness is a part of that. And then Scott talked about forgiveness being a part of that, what goes on that field, if you will, and selflessness last week, how we got to give 100% when we're a part of this and be able to play on that field. And all of that, and the words, all those are taking place. But it's important to understand when we think of love in the terms of relationships, that the field in soccer, they call the field the pitch. But in the loving relationships of life, the title is grace. That when we interact with another person, what we're doing is we're interacting in the context of grace. So forgiveness is a part of grace. The words we choose to use is a part of grace. Our kindness, our patience, all of that lives in this context of God's grace. Unmerited favor that we show to this other person. The willingness to give 100% without expecting anything back. That's what takes place when we're talking about these loving relationships that are happening in our life. But as I said, there's another part to this that is critical for us to truly experience and to live in the context of love. And that's the markers. There are 4 markers that define the boundaries, if you will, of this relationship. If you want to have a lasting, loving relationship with whoever the person you put in there is, then you need to be able to work and interact and communicate and talk and act within these boundaries. When you step out of those boundaries, you no longer are working within this loving relationship that God defines. So what are those boundaries? Well, 1 Corinthians 13:7 describes all 4, just in a small verse where it says, love always. And I want to take a look at that today as we go through that. First of all, what it talks about, love always protects. Always protects. It's not love sometimes protects or love. That's the one thing about that word of habit, and this doesn't apply because it's not like a habit of protecting. Love from God always protects. That word protect, actually the Greek translation of that literally means to cover with a roof. It's an image of a relationship where you protect it, that you cover it to keep it from the outside elements, keep it from the things that could destroy, the cold, the rain, the things that could hurt it, that you guard that relationship is what's being described there. That in everything in that relationship, when you approach that relationship, that person, that interaction, you do it with an attitude of protection. What can I do to keep the harm that could hurt this relationship, but also what can I do to offer the best that this relationship needs to have? God demonstrates that to us in the way that he protects his relationship with us. We often complain about the 10 Commandments as, oh man, God, what is he, he's a God of rules. He's a God that recognizes that sin undermines our relationship. And therefore, he says, to truly experience the love of God, this ocean of love that God offers, we have to live at that level. He can't compromise and say, oh, you know what, you're not that great, you do this, that, but that's okay, we can get along, don't worry about it. He wants a relationship at the highest level, and he protects it from the impurity of sin. But he also knows, in protecting that relationship, that there's no way that we can live up to that. And so we know from the Bible, it says that he offered himself. That through his own Son coming and dying and rising again, that he gave us the victory of the penalty of that we could now live with us in a relationship, and that through Christ's death and resurrection, we no longer face the punishment of that sin. That's his way of protecting and nurturing our relationship. That, yeah, he has to be a just God and it has to be perfect. That's why when someone says, if you're good enough, you can go to heaven, it says, no. But we also know we have the security of the relationship, that God protects it by offering what's necessary for us to be able to enjoy it together. That's God's way of doing it. So the question then to us is that how can we protect our relationships that are around us? Well, let me ask you, what are the things that harm those relationships? When you think of the person that you wrote down, what harms that relationship? Is it attitude? I come in with a negative attitude about it? Is it kind of a selfishness that, I want it for me, and like the selflessness we talked about last week, that I'm not willing to give, and so I put conditions on that relationship? Is it gossip or anger or bitterness or other things that they poison that relationship? Any of those things can harm it, and we need to protect against it. It can also be individualism. It can also be this attitude. I remember a couple coming to me for premarital counseling, and she talked about how she goes out with the girls partying on Friday nights, and he goes out with the guys, and I say, really, is that healthy? Is that really going to protect that relationship? Or do you start, and the minute you have conflict, you want to run off and go out, drinking with other people? Or family? I had another couple that I went with, and they had a situation where the family getting in the middle of them, and it said, look, you have a responsibility to guard your relationship and not let your family interfere. Your I won't say in-laws, but your other people interfere.